Okay, this is kind of a throwaway test video, but I'm testing something that's been bugging me. You hear me through my series. Number one, I'm new to this. I've only been doing this tubery thing for a month. I filmed before that for, probably the last 6 months. I filmed various things using this same camera and trying to learn how to use it and viewing it on my home equipment and whatever. Oddly enough, something that has happened that I didn't account for is that when I load these up onto YouTube, they come out a number of shades darker than they are in their native format. By darker, I just mean the ambient lighting. I just mean that I'll put something on, I'll think it's brightly lit. I view it at home, everything looks good. I upload it onto YouTube and I view it back on the same computer, same equipment, same everything, and it's not good. It's quite a bit darker. We're actually missing some details. So I'm gonna do something that's kind of been niggling in the back of my mind for a while anyway. We're gonna talk about something entirely different. We're gonna talk about the concept that gets thrown around out there that you can seat bullets long and get them to hold a case back against the bolt face. I'm just throwing this in because I've just come through a series of testing. I just did a thing where I took a 6 PPC, shot some 108 Eubers through it, which are right here. This is a 108 grain Euber 6mm bullet. And I ran these up with a light charge up to a heavy charge, and I ran them from 24 grains to 30 grains of Varget. And I got them up to 2,700 feet per second in a very predictable manner. And during that experiment, during that mess, I mentioned that I was burning up some old bullets. And I did. The 2 bullets that I fired, I called them deformed, and I didn't elaborate on it. I'm going to try, I've got the lights brightened up a little bit, and I'm going to try some close-ups. I'm going to try some things. As I said, this might be a throwaway. It might be a waste of all of your time. I don't know. But I'm going to talk for a while about the whole, this is another of my Think With Me videos. We're going to talk about the entire concept of holding a loaded round back against the bolt face for proper fire forming. When I say proper fire forming, I mean everyone. I'm going to make a blanket statement. Everyone who's ever fire formed on this planet before, who has the means, the capability, and the instrumentation to measure the setback on their cases, has found that they'll go out, fire form their cases, and then when they put a little gizzy on there, or a gizmo, or a shoulder reset gauge, and they gauge the setback at the shoulder, they find variation in the headspace, which is the length of the cartridge. This pops up on the inner tube periodically, probably between the couple of forums that I've kept an eye on Bench Central, and I've been a member of Bench Central since the mid-90s. Due to the popularity of the BR, another forum called 6mmbr.com started, and I got slightly involved with that, but they've kicked me off by now, of course, which is always going to happen because people find opinions to be disturbing and they find me to be abrasive. So, that's taken care of. But these are 2 of the, let's say there's 100 shooting forums on the net, and they vary in quality from bottom to top, side to side. They all attract a different set of people. When it comes to extreme accuracy issues, I think Bench Rest Central is the main one, because it focuses on bench rest shooting, which is where, and I'm going to use an expletive again that may be a little too all-encompassing. That's where all accuracy innovation comes from, is from the bench rest circuit. That's going to just piss a lot of people off. Don't care. I'm all done with that. I'm all done getting kicked off of forums. I'm all done with caring whether anybody's pissed off at my opinions. This is called Opinions by Al. If you don't like it, there's the door. Don't let it hit you in the ass. So, what we're going to talk about today is something that on the 2 forums that I monitor, and I've I have a lot of friends, a lot of shooting friends, a lot of people getting into this, a lot of people asking questions, a lot of people using the various resources, and a lot of people coming and saying, you know, I ran across this on the inner tube. What do you think of this? Hopefully not to get an answer from me, because I tell all of these people over and over, don't get answers from Al. Get opinions from Al. Put them into your think box and think about them. This is all about thinking, making decisions, learning to make decisions, learning who to get information from. I'm one of many. But there are some truly horrible and some truly poorly thought out answers available in books. I'm not gonna indict the internet, because that is where the cutting edge stuff happens, and that's where it comes up. I've watched books propagate and promulgate and continue to pass on stuff that's been in our public consciousness for years that is as revolting as pennies off the Empire State Building or alligators in the sewers. And one of them has, well, two of them. I just got a call last night from a guy that is trying to work up loads for a gun before he has a reloading die. Just built him a gun. He's excited. He wants to go shoot it. And so he's wanting to build up some loads, and he's asking about overall length. And of course, most of the reloading books still warn against getting too close to the lens. Don't get too close to the lens. Well, I'm sorry, people, but I'm going to say all in the sense of 99.9% of all people who win bench rest matches seat to the lands, into the lands, jammed in the lands, square in the lands, somewhere within a thou or two of the lands, all the time. Berger's really trying to push this idea of jumping 10 thou, 20 thou, 30 thou out to 60 thou. I don't want to opine on any of that, except to say that in my limited testing in my little backyard hack show, I always start with a jam set, which means simply it's different for every gun, different for every bullet, different for every ogive configuration, different for every lead or lance cut configuration. I use lead angles from 1 to 1.3 to 1.5 to 1.6 to 2 degrees. I don't have any opinions. I've got 3 different reamers cut with what I'm going to just throw out there is called a progressive lead. That's not the term Dave Kiff used. But the leads are actually cupped to match. In some cases, a series of straight angles, in one place actually cupped. All of this aside, this lends itself and leads itself into a subject that's really big, and that is that urban legend has built the 6-dasher. I hate to even say 6-dasher, because technically that's a bastardization of something called the 22-dasher, which was capital D, capital A, developed by 2 men. And it was a superlative system because it allowed you to neck a case down, set its headspace tight, make beautiful cases. The 22-dasher is an artistic success. The 6mm dasher, not so much. The 6mm dasher is kind of retarded. But a bunch of people have, it's become a part of the public consciousness. And the reason it's retarded is because nobody knows how to make cases for it. But once your cases are hammered in, and the 6BR case is short enough that it doesn't banana very much, you still get a really good shooting cartridge, even when you make your brass poorly because you don't know any better. I contend that the 6x47 case blows it out of the water in every dimension because it's the same case except with a real neck on it. Now, again, in the real world, the 6-dasher has still empirically, see, there's a difference between provable scientific evidence and anecdotal and empirical evidence. Empirical evidence almost always wins because that is called what it showed me on the target. In the real world, on the target, the dasher is a winning round. Now, me being the why guy, I'm like, why? That doesn't make any sense. Well, it does make sense when you follow the whole genesis, which is the creation of, the development of the 6mm dasher. But through all this is this interwoven thread of how do we properly fire form cases. So this is what we're going to talk. I'm going to show you some of the bullets that I just sent down range. I put 2 down before I destroyed my cases, before I destroyed my brass. But I'm playing with lighting, and I'm going to talk about the fact, and I'm going to draw pictures, and I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to show you why the idea of loading into the lands, of loading bullets long, of holding bullets long, of loading them long and letting them jam set, can lead to case destroying. It just did to me, because I made the same old bad assumption. All these bullets are just seated long. Well, they were seated long. And when I seated them down, they came back through something called the donut. This wasn't an actual donut, but the bullet seated back into a spot where it jammed, didn't want to release. That video's out there on the internet. As I said, warts, feathers, and all, people. Screw-ups and everything. I make it, I break it, you see it. I got nothing to hide. I'm no genius. I've got no pride whatsoever. So, we're going to talk about jamming bullets, jam-setting bullets into the lands in an attempt to hold a case back for proper fire forming. We're going to talk about the logics of that. We're going to talk about, can it work? Does it work? I'm going to tell you the answers all up front. No, they don't. No, it doesn't. Now, do the guns fire? Yeah. Do you get a case up? Yeah. Do they win? Yeah. Oh, yeah. But it goes back to what I said about 5 minutes ago. Anybody who has the capacity, the ability, and the tools to go out and measure their cases is going to find out that case heads are crooked. Hence this whole, it's been gone for 20 years now because all the smart people passed on. That was funny on some level. I know some people who used to do a lot of testing. Now we got a bunch of people guessing and guessing and guessing on the internet. Well, what about the would you freaking test? Skip Auto. Guy that spent a lot of time on Bench Rest Central, I'm going to use his name. Rest in peace, Skipper, because you tested stuff like a mother, and I loved that. I argued with Skip on many fronts, but one of the things Skip used to do was he would turn case heads because he started to measure them up, and he found out that these case heads in his fireform cases weren't square, they were cocked. And we argued about why and how, but his way of fixing them was to make a fixture and turn them off flat. So be it. I said, screw that, Skipper. Make them right the first time. You don't have to deal with that. The other problem is the varying headspace lengths. So I'm going to show you some of the extremes I've gone to recently. Now understand, in my attempt, I've gone to extremes way beyond this, but these bullets I'm throwing away come from a recent experience where I was trying to seat some bullets really heavy. I'll show you what they look like. So you've probably all heard stories and fables about increasing your neck tension in an attempt to get your bullet to seat tightly against the lands. Let's just draw some lands here in case I start talking and things just kind of get out of line. So here's our old chamber drawing. Here's the end of the chamber. This is something called the free bore. Then there's a lead angle. The actual barrel continues on like this, but the rifling lands go like that. So a bullet sits in here. This is the neck of the case. That's part of a cartridge case. And the bullet sits in here and it nestles up against this lead area in many cases. This is called seated into the lands, and commonly you'll get something, or you'll go for something called a square mark, which means that your scuff will be roughly square. This is the scuff that occurs right here, where the bullet is scuffing against the land. Now, if this bullet is seated too long, and you continue to do this, and it bumps against here, and it can't engrave in because that takes hundreds of pounds, it then pushes the bullet back into the case. This is what happened to me the other day when I wrecked a case. I made a bad assumption. assumptions make an ass of you and me, and I proved it. I made an ass of me by assuming that because a certain bullet didn't have a pressure ring, it wouldn't bind up. Once I got in, it would be fine. Well, it was a fat bullet. It was fatter than the bullet I had in prior that did have a pressure ring. So bad assumptions can get you hurt. I'm a careful guy, so I didn't get hurt. I didn't hurt anything. I didn't hurt my $2,000 Nouveau action. I go into things with a plan. So, here I'm drawing OJs here. So anyway, the idea is that you're trying to hold this case tightly to get a jam fit. I go on and on about jam fit. I get my jam fits by jamming the case at the shoulder, always. I won't say always because I have some really exotic wildcats that are necked from different places where I'll actually use just this corner of the case, or of the chamber, to neck against either a step in the case neck. I have case necks that I turn with a step in them, and I have been known to headspace right there. Bullet goes into here, or in a lot of cases I'll do it without a bullet. So there's various ways, but you have to get something that will resist 50 pounds of force. And a bullet won't do that. I was telling you the other day about the bullets that I fired. I'm not even going to show you any new ones because I already put them away. But suffice it, today I was using a set of Bergers, forget I said Bergers, Eubers. Some of the last ones Allie made, and they're like my benchmark 600-yard bullet because I can compare stuff to them. I have other bullets that I think shoot just as well, but I just trust these things. I know what they do. So during the course of trying different things, I have some that are left over from a number of years ago, back when I was doing some testing. I was trying to seat bullets into the lands, and I tried everything from epoxy, from high neck tension, super thick necks, super high tensions, epoxying the bullet into the neck of the case. I never did solder one, but I was tempted to take it that far. I just didn't want that solder grinding on my barrel. But the point is, I tried everything. I degreased bullets, left them set in mech overnight, and turned them in and epoxied them in. I superglued. Learned a lot about superglue during that time. Superglue has no shear strength. Interesting thing to know about superglue. On the mill, you can superglue a part down, work it, tap the side with a hammer, and it'll shear right off. Its whole lattice work lays flat. It offers a tremendous strength separating. They hang the guy from the helmet. If you're an old guy, you remember the motorcycle dude hanging from his helmet with a drop of super glue, okay? It has tremendous tensile strength, no shear strength. So, didn't do much for this. Epoxy has pretty good both, so I tried different glues. I tried everything. During the course of this, I deformed some bullets. These bullets are probably 10 or 15 years old. I saved them only because they're my precious Eubers. I think highly of these, but I threw everything else away, of course, after my testing, or shot it down the range. But these Eubers I ended up pulling because during my testing. But I want to show you something, just how much pressure I put on these pigs. Come right up here. I ringed them. That's from too much seating pressure. But check out that one there. There were 6 or 7 of these. And I continued because I was fireforming. I was testing fireforming with heavy. I was going to say heavy bullets. I was testing the concept of fireforming with no powder, using only no bullet, using only a shotgun powder, or using a fast burning powder and a light bullet to pop them out, and using a more standardized loading, which would be, say, in this case, I was using RL-17 or 4350, which are as close to interchangeable as can be had, and I was testing fireforming methods. No bullet with a super fast powder, fireforming with a light bullet and a moderately fast powder, and fireforming with a big heavy bullet, and the slow powder commensurate with this type of fireforming. During this course, I warped some bullets pretty hardcore. because I was trying for a neck tension on this thing, and I got it. I mean, I ended up pulling them back out. You can see the marks on there. I pulled these ones because the test went another direction. But I had these things kicking around. These are two of these that look just like this are what I shot down the target the other day and pressured up. So, long story short, no matter how much neck tension you put on, seating against this surface right here will never work to hold the case back. When the firing pin hits it with that 28-pound brick, it's going to go forward. It's going to do one of 3 or 4 or 5 things. It's going to push the bullet back in the case, as I showed here. It might push the bullet, especially if you've got a long ogive. You know, you got a 9 or 10 ogive. You can engrave into here 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 thousandths. I think I tested one time. I had bullets that would go in up to 18 thousandths from touching to 18 thousandths. And I would just honestly say easy 20 thou if you've got a real long ogive on your bullet. So you can either push it into the lands, and the firing pin will do that with its 28-pound hammer, or you can slide the bullet back in the case. One of those things is going to happen. The bullet is incapable of holding it in place. So, for proper fire forming, you have to make sure that you've got some kind of a shouldering assembly. It can be in the neck, it can be in a necked down shoulder that goes like this, and you can go right here. Some of my shortened Wildcats, the dasher, it constantly comes. There's one other way that it's held back, and that is by the fact that you get them close, because on a typical, especially on a bench rest gun, on a good gun, the extractor holds it close enough to the bolt face that it'll fire. You can put a .308 bullet in a 30-06. I'm sorry, I just committed the classic movie faux pas. You can put a .308 round into a 30-06 chamber, and the extractor will hold it against the bolt face depending on the type of gun that you've got, and it'll still fire, and it'll just blow out and most often send the bullet down the barrel. Although I know of a guy that blew his gun sky high by putting a 7mm in a 30-06. It was short enough. A 7mm is as in .280 Remington, called 7mm Express back in the day. That bullet somehow got sideways before it hit the throat, at least enough to jam up and go down the bore with about 20 degrees of inbore yaw. Didn't go down the bore is the point. It splattered out the bore. They saw the chunks, but it blew the action wide open. So I just wanted to show some of the extremes that we've gone to before in trying to seat bullets tightly, and they didn't work. They were a failure. And I'm just throw these in the garbage or use them for fire forming one of these days. Anyway, they were laying there. I'm testing lighting. Sayonara.